Today, I want to talk about something that doesn't get talked about enough, where we can feel safe or worried or scared to be fully seen. And we think that this is actually what we want, but our body doesn't feel safe enough to do this. And it's not that we don't have self trust or we don't have confidence, it's actually that our body has just felt not safe because of all of the messaging that we receive in our environment and that we receive societally that makes it difficult for us to fully show up as ourselves. So instead of feeling comfortable and safe doing that, we overthink, we hesitate, we second guess ourselves. And a lot of this comes from the messaging that we've received outside of ourselves that we've just taken on as fact or truth without even questioning it. So, this is exactly what we're going to get into today. My name is Crystal Hoban. I'm an identity coach, and I help people stop abandoning themselves in life and in love. So, if you're ready to stop disconnecting from yourself and learn how to reconnect to yourself and build the trust and confidence that you need to move forward and stop overthinking, then that's exactly what I do. So, I want to talk about today why being fully expressed feels so unsafe. Because if it felt safe, wouldn't everybody be doing it? Right? If it felt like something that was easy, wouldn't everybody just do it? There are so many people that want to be authentic, that want to be able to show up that way, but they feel like there's so many things that are blocking them and making it difficult for them to show up fully expressed as exactly who they are. And I want to acknowledge that it makes sense. It makes sense that there's certain things that make it difficult for you to show up that way. And a big part of that is the way that society talks about these things, where it's kind of like all of these negative beliefs about if you show up fully as yourself, what does that look like? That looks selfish. That looks like you being too much, right? And especially as a woman doing that. And so I think that there's just like so many different beliefs and different opinions about what it means to do that. And also, if you do that, then you're full of yourself. I'm sure you've probably heard that one before, right? Where you must be full of yourself or you must love yourself too much. Like that's even a thing, right? But these are all ways, like all of these assumptions and all of these societal ways that really keep us from fully expressing who we are and being who we are. And so, not only do we have all of these different messages that actually come in and make it really difficult for us to show up authentically and for us to show up exactly as we are, fully and expressed, right? But there's also these experiences that you've had with people one on one that probably also affect your ability to show up that way. And I would say that these are probably some of the bigger blocks where, you maybe grew up in a family where you were taught to be modest. And when you showed up in a space of like being really proud of yourself or loving something that you did and being really proud of what you did, right? That was probably seen as you being too much, you being selfish, you being like too egotistical. Like that's the other thing that I kind of hear a lot too. And what I want to acknowledge is it's just like this idea that if you love yourself too much, then you must be narcissistic, you must be egotistical, you must be a bitch, right? Like, what? So, all of these messaging is kind of teaching us to not love ourselves, right? Not choose ourselves and put ourselves first. And so, I think that's probably one of the bigger reasons that makes it so difficult for people to show up in this space because there's just so many opinions on what that looks like. And if you do that, what that actually means, right? And what I think is really interesting is that because this has been the messaging that your parents received, your grandparents before that received, right? Like this has been the messaging from generation to generation to generation that only within recent years are we starting to really challenge this and see this in a different way. And more people are kind of saying, I don't believe that anymore. And they're doing something different, right? And I want to just acknowledge that when you've had this drop down from generation to generation to generation to generation, then obviously in the family system that you grew up in, you also experienced these beliefs being thrown at you. You experienced, these ideas being thrown at you. And they were really just believing and functioning in the way that they were taught to and what they knew best, right? And I was talking to a lot of clients about this week because so many of us will just take information in and we won't question it. We won't ask ourselves, like, does that actually fit for me? Do I feel like that's actually true for me? Do I believe that? Right? A lot of us just kind of like receive the information and we eat it up instead of asking ourselves, does that actually fit for me? And do I actually believe that? It's like we run on this autopilot. We believe that our parents know better than we do. We believe that the successful person knows things better than we do. So they must know what's right. And instead of like stopping for a second and questioning, does this actually feel true for me? Is this actually something that I believe or that I want to believe? We just take it on as fact. And I've seen this over and over and over again when working with clients because they trust me, they like me, right? And we've done things that have worked in the past. But what I always say to my clients too is don't take what I'm saying at face value, right? Ask yourself, does that actually fit for me or work for me? I don't think you should ever take anything that anyone says as absolute fact. You have to decide if that's something that fits with you or not. And I'm not going to be offended if at the end of the day, what I suggest is not something that actually works for you or that you want to believe. So then we just find a different route and we find a different way to move forward, right? I think that so many of us think that we know best for other people. And the reality is that we don't. The only person that knows what's best for you is you. And helping to guide you to how to reconnect with yourself is exactly what I do. I'm not here to tell you what to do and how to do it. I'm here to help guide you and figure that out in a way that works for you. And I just feel like that's so different with each individual person. It's kind of why they talk about how if you're not running your business from a human design perspective, right, then you're not doing yourself a service because everybody is so unique and individual in their own way. So that how they're going to show up and what they need to be successful and to be able to reconnect to themselves is going to be different with each person. And so it's really about kind of getting together with that person and yes, having an education and understanding of what it needs to get there, but really starting to figure out what that looks like for each individual person because that path is going to be different. The blocks are going to be different, right? And so that's exactly what I do in coaching is I help people reconnect with themselves because they have not been able to figure that out on their own in some ways. And so I help to bring the education and understanding that I know and then help it paired with what they actually need and what they're telling me works for them, right? And together we create a process and a way to move forward. I just feel like so often we're just giving our power away in so many different ways and thinking that what's right for that person must be right for me. And you don't know that. You can try it, but when it doesn't work, right? That's when we start beating ourselves up. That's when we start shaming ourselves. That's when we start feeling like there must be something wrong with me because it worked for that person. So why doesn't it work for me? Not everything that works for other people is going to work for you. Things are going to look different. That's kind of part of us being uniquely who we are. And when we get to relearn ourselves and understand who we are and really understand who we are on a deep soul level, right? That's when we can understand what's going to work for us and what's not going to work for us. And we stop spreading ourselves so thin, trying to get all the answers from all these other people of what's working for them. Because when you truly know yourself, then you know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And you don't even give time or space to the things that don't. But so often we are taught to constantly be focused on things outside of ourselves, constantly be focused on what this professional knows or this person is telling us or this must be right, rather than recognizing that every answer that we need is actually inside of us. We have everything that we need inside of us, but it's about learning how to re-listen to our inner voice. And that is the work that I do with clients, where I help them come back to themselves and listen to their inner voice and how to hear that again, rather than the overthinking mind, right? So there's this nervous system component to this as well. people want to be fully expressed and they want to be authentically themselves. But to fully get to that point, you have to feel safe enough in your body to be with yourself. And there's a nervous system component that happens here where you have to feel like you can regulate yourself enough to be with yourself rather than keep trying to escape to what everybody else thinks or what everybody else knows the answer to be, right? And so a lot of the tools that I work on in coaching is really about how do we feel comfortable being with ourselves again so that we can sit in ourselves long enough and sit in silence long enough so that we can hear our own voice that is meant to guide us. Because all of us have that inner compass, that inner guide. The question is, are you listening to it? And do you feel safe enough to sit with yourself to wait for it so that you can hear it? So my point is that coming back to yourself and being authentic with yourself is an unshedding. It's an unshedding of a lot of different things that you were taught, that you learned, past experiences that you then made meaning about who you are and what you're capable of. It's a shedding of all of these different things, letting go of all the things that you were force fed and you just believed without questioning, right? So there's a self-awareness piece that also comes with this, and understanding, am I taking the time to ask myself if that fits for me, or am I just in autopilot and taking things on? Because many of us are functioning in that autopilot place, right? And as we function in that autopilot place throughout our lives, we're constantly taking things in and not even questioning them. We're taking them in as fact, right? And that can then be detrimental to us coming out and showing up as who we fully are. Because when we're just taking things in and we're not asking ourselves if it fits with us, then we're believing that something outside of us knows better than we do, right? And so that's so much of the work that I do, especially in my program, Fully Expressed and Unavailable for Less, is you coming back to yourself, reconnecting with yourself, so that you can actually understand what it is that you truly want, what it is that you truly desire, not what everybody else has told you that you want to desire. And what I find so interesting too is that, you know, we think that once we, and I see this with clients all the time, we think that once we check these boxes that we'll be happy, right? Once we have the house, once we have the kids, once we have the family, once we have that job that's making enough money, once we have the vacations, once we check all these boxes, we'll truly be happy and everything will be great. That's usually when I start seeing people coming into my practice because they're like, well, what's wrong with me? I've checked all the boxes and I'm still not happy. Why? What is wrong with me? And these are the spaces, right, where that shedding is important. Did you just take on those check boxes because that's what everybody else told you would make you happy? Or is that actually what makes you happy, right? And so there's this breakdown that I think needs to happen within this space. And I know this better than anyone else because I checked all those boxes in my life at a point in time. And I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be happy, but I'm not. So what the hell is going on? Why? Why am I still not happy with my life when I've checked all these boxes and I have the money and I can move freely and I work only 3 days a week? Like, what is happening? Like, why aren't I happy? What's wrong with me? And there was nothing wrong with me per se. And it took me a while to realize that. What was wrong is what I chose to believe. What I thought was going to make me happy is what everybody else told me I was supposed to do, not what I actually wanted to do or what actually brought me joy. And I ended up waking up one day and being like, oh my gosh, I have all the things and I'm still not happy. So what is wrong with me? And the problem is there's nothing wrong with you. But when we're functioning from that place, we feel like there's something must be wrong with us, right? Everybody else is happy having all of these things. Why aren't we? And I challenge you in that space. Because how do you know that those other people are happy having those things? Because they say it? Because you want to believe that? Because some people maybe are, but not everybody, right? You don't actually know what goes on inside of someone else. And just because someone looks super successful and looks like they should be happy doesn't mean that they are. This breaks down into kind of like the lies that we tell ourselves so that we don't have to do the work to change or we don't have to do the work to heal. And so many of us They're pretty good lies. We've been lying to ourselves for many years. We've gotten really good at them, right? But we lie to ourselves about how we actually feel because of what we think we should feel rather than what we actually feel. And the way that you know that you're doing this is that you're functioning from a place of overthinking. You're functioning from a place of constantly doing. You're keeping yourself super busy. You're not actually able to slow down and stop and be still without overthinking. That's information that you're probably tapped into that space of everybody else must know what's right for me rather than being truly connected to yourself and following your true north. And I think that it's really hard to look at because I know when I had to go through it, it was fucking hard to look at. It didn't feel good, to be honest with you. And though I'm happy that I did the work because I feel completely different now. I wake up every day excited and I wake up every day feeling fully alive. And that was something that was missing before. Life is not about what it looks like, it's about how it truly feels for you. And so many of us keep ourselves so busy that we don't actually even give ourselves the time to recognize how it actually feels for us. And that is how you know you're disconnected from yourself. But like I said earlier, right, society keeps us kind of in that space. It makes it very difficult for us to come back to ourselves and to tap into ourselves. And then also, with all the technology and everything that we have going on nowadays, right, it's so easy for us to never spend time with ourselves and come back to ourselves. And so some of us are just so disconnected and haven't been with ourselves in so long. And anytime that we do, right, we get really emotional, we start overthinking. That's information that you're not tapped into yourself, you're not connected to yourself. And so therefore, you are most likely performing in many different aspects of your life. And I think what I've noticed is eventually it gets to a place where it's too much. It gets to a place where you kind of can't handle it anymore. And then something has to shift. And most of the time when we get there, we feel like something's wrong with us. But the reality is there's nothing wrong with you. It's the way that you've been making your choices and functioning and where you've been making those choices from that actually has been harmful to you. So people want to be fully expressed and they want to be authentic, but performing is so much easier because it takes that deeper work. It takes that being able to sit with yourself. It takes that nervous system regulation piece. It takes you making a choice to do that. And I think that that's the harder part for many people because it's asking you to slow down and it's asking you to be with yourself for the first time. And so many people don't even know where to start with that. So that's exactly what I do in my coaching is I help people stop overthinking. I help them stop second guessing themselves and actually get into their body and reconnect with who they actually are so they can stop performing in their life and actually stop filtering themselves so they can be who they truly are and feel free. You can find out more information at crystalclearmystic.com if you're interested. And just know that we all deserve to be fully expressed in who we are, and that's the freest you will ever be.